Hello and welcome. I'm Karen Roth, the FY25 president of the Society of Women Engineers. And I'm here in the WE24 Diverse Podcast Studio with Sharon, one of our keynote speakers at SWE's annual conference. Sharon is the Vice President of Ecosystem Solutions and Video Sales Engineering at Motorola Solutions. And she just opened WE24 a few minutes ago with this incredible talk on standing strong in your emotions and making sure you bring your authentic self.
Hey, so Karen, I feel like this was the Karen and Sharon show. You were so amazing up there, and it was just so much fun to be up on stage with you.
So now we're going to do a short Q&A with Sharon based on questions that IDM's members submitted to us live during her talk via the WE24 mobile app. And if you missed Sharon's keynote and want to watch the full talk, which I highly, highly recommend, you can find the recording in SWE's Advanced Learning Center at advancedlearning.swe.org. So let's get started. All right. So we have our first question here. We've got a list. I promise they're real and live here. So, fantastic keynote, Sharon.
Thank you.
This was the most relatable sessions ever. My question is that how do you handle breakdowns at a workplace? In simpler words, what do you do when you feel like crying in the workplace? Is it even normal for executives to feel like this?
Okay, so my general approach is if you feel like crying, just cry. And I'll tell you, the first time that I saw that it was okay to cry at work was actually I saw another woman executive that I worked under give a speech about how proud she was of the team. And she teared up in front of everyone. And just for perspective, she was, leading a bunch of men, like everyone in her team were men. And she still got choked up and spoke from her heart and teared up and cried. And I thought it was so amazing. I remember thinking that was where I learned to be able to, be okay with expressing our feelings. And, sometimes I have people who, especially come into my office, and as they talk with me, they get teary-eyed. And I know that as a leader, when they're crying, it's because they've done everything that they could to hold their emotions in and not get to that point, right? None of us like to cry in the office. I hate it. I've done it, and I
get blotchy. Yeah, it's a thing.
It's awful, and you don't. So I'm not telling everyone to go just cry on a whim, but man, if you can't hold it in, I just think it's okay to cry in front of people when you're feeling it, because that's when they also know that you need help without you saying it, and they can help you as well.
I think that those are the moments when people realize that you're a real human being.
Yeah.
And take a pause and reset how they see you and how they believe you. And then that's the start of what real leadership looks like.
Yes, I agree.
All right. So next question. I was born in a small rural town that has begun dwelling in population, that the high school and junior high has been combined. How can I encourage the students that they are better than their circumstances and they too can achieve their own versions of success?
Wow. I can relate to this situation in the sense that I've had teams before who didn't necessarily believe in themselves. And I think it's so important to be able to have a firm identity around what you stand for as a group or an organization or as a school. And not just around, the things that you're going to do, like, hey, we're the Wildcats or something like that, right? But it's to have some sort of tagline that says, we are the future or we are the best, something that everyone can get around. And I feel like if you have that right message, everyone starts to believe that they are that. And to be able to have activities and, exercises that relate to that, right? Whether it's an event or some sort of activity, really to capture the spirit of that rallying cry.
And I think, Grishanda, you are that person too. I mean, I grew up in a small rural high school with a dwindling population, but the teachers that were in that high school were the answer to making sure we didn't know that we thought we were any different or looked any different or acted any different. And at least one of them is here talking to you today. So,
and to that point too, I think also as you're part of SWE, you have an entire network of amazing people that you can bring into the community as well. And with technology these days, being able to expose everyone to maybe people who've had the similar stories of having, like Karen here, to be able to share their stories, right? And show the students where else they can go from where they are today.
I love having a chat with anyone. Anytime someone sends me a message about having a quick chat or conversation. I'm like, of course, I wanted to do that. Like, all right, we can push off this other work stuff until later, right?
Right, yes.
So what was the tipping point that really allowed you to start believing the compliments that you give yourself?
I mean, that story that I told in the keynote, it wasn't just a story. I mean, it really happened. I mean, that really was the tipping point for me. Because up until that point, I was feeling pretty crummy about myself. You know, I felt stressed out. I felt like, pretty alone too, because, and you've probably dealt with this, Karen, when you move into leadership, you find that it's hard. The people who were your friends before, they're still your friends, but if they're working with you or for you, all of a sudden you can't be as close with them.
There's things that people are uncomfortable saying around you, even in a personal environment, and your peer group, it gets to be different. And
totally. And people around you change. And so now, sometimes people come up to you and you're not sure if they're being genuine or not. So it can feel like a pretty lonely place. And I was in that place. I felt pretty lonely. I felt, like nobody could understand how I was feeling. But again, in that moment when I gave myself that compliment, I never actually, do you do that for yourself, by the way? Do you give yourself compliments? Have you tried that before?
I tried to this week. I'm trying very hard to make sure that, all right, take the compliment, sit in it, enjoy it, and be yourself. So that's what I'm trying to do every morning. I'm trying to give myself a compliment.
Yeah. And, I found too that when people compliment me, I'd be like, okay, that's great. Thank you. And I would never sit in it. I'd just be like, yeah, like, okay, nonsense.
Are you just saying things?
Right. Exactly. And, and I would say that was a tipping point for me. And when I started to realize and really just pause for a moment and just soak it in, which we're just not very good at, I don't think, that's when it really started to turn for me.
I can tell you, I really enjoyed just standing to the side, watching the reactions to all 8,000 people in that room just now, and just how much they were soaking in what you were saying. So I tried to soak that in myself.
Oh.
So what has worked for you to sit with your emotions in the moment, like in a meeting or a gathering with others versus reacting?
So what it looks like on the surface is it looks kind of like this. Just on the surface, you just keep doing what you're doing. But in the inside, you're literally panicking. Like in the inside, you can feel it. You're, just the knot in your stomach and your chest. And in your head, you're going, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Like, I'm just not doing well right now. But what's interesting is as you just keep going through the motions, like I talked about, it does pass. And the other thing actually that you get some insight to is what actually triggers that feeling. And sometimes it's something totally out of the blue.
Yeah.
It might be, I don't know, maybe like, here's a picture of my script, right? And, it could be, I'm looking at the script right now as we're talking and I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to say that one thing. But it's in my head going, oh man, I forgot.
This is the thing that they'll know that.
Right. And it's in my head, but here we are talking in the podcast, even though that's going in my mind. And so you just kind of let it go. You distance yourself, say, oh, there it is. And then just let it dissipate on its own.
I think the biggest thing is to try to slow your mind down, for me at least, of like, whenever I start to get anxious or panic, my mind starts to like speed up like 1,000 times a minute. And like, their breath, just like stop the voice. And let it continue a little bit slower and slower and slower until it fades out.
Well, and one thing we didn't talk about in the keynote today was, if you actually dig into this 90-second rule a little bit more, it's actually your brain's way of protecting you from danger. So if a proverbial lion jumps out at you, right, you don't have time to think, what should I do? Like, should I run? Should I stare? Should I fight? All of those physical feelings are really there to get you to act right away, right? So that you run right away. You're not thinking about it to save your life.
Chase after our kids, right? For whatever danger they're trying to get.
I mean, if your kid gets in danger, you're not even thinking about it, right? But you are not thinking in that moment. And so now all of a sudden, any kind of rational decision making is completely out the door. Your part of that brain is not even engaged at that point. But then by slowing down, you give yourself the opportunity to get out of that instinctive mind and into your reasonable mind to say, okay, let me make a reasonable, informed decision now.
And the answer is never take a selfie with the lion. I've learned this a lot from the National Park Service's tweets. When you slow down, the answer is still not to take a selfie with
not take a selfie with the lion. And your emotions will not tell you to do that.
So do you have any advice for someone expecting their first kid and a mom going back to full-time work with dad staying at home?
Oh, man.
They're not pulling their punches.
So there's a few things. I think the first one is whether you're pregnant, about to have a child, or just early days with that younger child, what you're going through is very normal. You are going to feel a lot like you don't have your stuff together. And that's okay. It's a very normal part of this whole phase in life. So if you're dealing with that right now, I just want you to know it's very normal to be going through this. You're never going to feel like you have it all together, not for a while, but it does get better. It really does. And as your kid starts to grow and develop, it doesn't get easier. So it just gets better in different ways.
It's easy to internalize what all is going around with you and assume that there's something there. I think it took me into my second kid to where I embraced the chaos. My first kid, I still tried to pretend that like everything was fine. I was going to do exactly what I did before. It took me till my second kid climbing on things. Yes. All right. It's time to embrace the chaos. It is what it is. And we're just going to make sure they'll stay alive.
And let's just call it like it is. That first year, you're kind of not yourself. You know, I mean, and just getting real for a moment, your body is still processing all those hormones that you're going through. That I know my first year, I didn't feel like myself at all. I tried to appear like myself, but on the inside, there were just times where I had thoughts or emotions, and I was just like, man, like I just feel so down or so stressed out. And, you know, it takes some time for your body to kind of get reacclimated to not being pregnant or bearing children anymore.
I think that happened after both my kids. I think I didn't realize what it was with my first one because she was a COVID baby. So she was born like 3 months after COVID or before COVID started. And so there was all this change and I was back to work for like 2 weeks before COVID. And then like I really took the time to like work through all that with my second daughter and what happened. But there's a lot of emotions there and that's okay.
And that must have been so tough too because you didn't necessarily have all the things that you would have had if COVID hadn't happened, right? Yep. All the support that you would have had from a lot of other people, other moms and all of that.
It gave us a little bit of time to quietly stay in one place and soak it all in and practice being parents and doing that. So that was the upside.
Yeah.
So when talking about anxiety, how does one know the difference between sitting in emotion and perpetuating the anxiety do loop? I'm listening really hard to this one, too. I need this lesson, too.
So the way I've figured that out for myself is I pay attention to the physical aspects of how I'm feeling. So if I'm feeling that tense, sort of caving in feeling that I describe, feeling stuck, in a way, the way I characterize it is I feel like I'm in trouble. Like, not in trouble, like, hell save me, but like, oh man, I just got in trouble. I did something bad and someone just reprimanded me kind of trouble. And that's the feeling that I get. That's how I know that I'm in an anxious state. And usually what I've found is when I, whatever my brain tells me in that moment, like, you should go do this, you should go talk to that person and just see if you're okay. Or, you know, some of those anecdotes that I threw out there, time and time again, when I am in that physical state, whatever action I take just makes me feel worse. And so I just wait for that to go away. And it's interesting because once it passes, all of a sudden you just feel more in the room, in the present, and sort of connected again. So I try to, when I'm feeling normal, like right now actually, and I'm feeling good, I try to connect with that and say, okay, remember, this is what normal should feel like. And when I'm feeling tense, like I'm in trouble, that's where the anxiety is. And that's where I know I just got to sit and let it pass until I get to how I'm feeling right now again.
I love that advice. So soak it all up. I hope everyone soaked it all up while they were here this week and is making sure that they know what good and supported feels.
Yes, absolutely.
So last question. And so this one is definitely making sure that we're set up for conference. Networking can feel intimidating. What networking advice do you have for women engineers attending events like SWE's annual conference?
So I've learned over the years, and I wish I knew this earlier, there's no easy way to do it. Meaning, if you overthink it and you're like, oh, what easiest thing to do is just take a deep breath, Walk up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm Sharon. What do you do?" Simple as that. I know it's scary, but just make yourself do it. And that's how those conversations start.
And I find that anytime you do that, that person was usually in the same state that you were in, being like, who do I walk up to and say hi to?
And they'll be so relieved that you actually approached them first.
It takes the relief off.
It really does.
So it looks like we're almost out of time for today's Q&A. Sharon, I really want to thank you for everything you shared with us today. And every single point that you made earlier in your intro was all about Together We Rise, especially with Bella and Bluey. So that was the part that I could hear the whole audience like mentally tearing up just a little bit. They've all watched that episode, I think, if you're a mom. So before we go, do you have any closing thoughts for our sweet people out there who are watching this at home?
I'll just say, you've got this. And you are who you are because of all the experiences that you have. And you should be proud of who you are, and you should be proud of that. So just continue to tune into that and show up as that.
It's going to make me tear up a little bit. So thank you, Sharon. You've been a great start to a really, really great conference. So once again, if you missed Sharon's opening keynote, or if you just want to rewatch her presentation, you can find the full video online in SWE's Advanced Learning session, along with hundreds of other options at advancedlearning.swe.org on demand. So for all of you that are watching, I'm Karen Roth, live here at WE24, and I'll see you for tomorrow's keynote Q&A with Catherine Hunt Ryan of Bechtel Manufacturing and Technology. Thank you.